I'd like to introduce to you our first speaker. It's Shannon Schuyler. She's a principal of corporate responsibility of PwC. Shannon will speak to us about the connection between creating shared value and social innovation. Shannon, welcome.
Ooh, and there goes the water. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. One of the things that I wanted to make sure not to do was to stand up here and to tell you all about PwC, even though I love to do that, and there's plenty of wonderful things that we've done in the sustainability and youth education area, and there's plenty to look out online. But what I wanted to talk about are the lessons that we've learned and some of the things that are actually keeping me awake at night that I'm thinking about, and I want to know if everybody here is thinking about them and thinking about how we can make them drive us to the next place. One of the things I do want to do before I forget, we have about 15 social innovators that are in the audience that are a collaboration between Points of Light, Starbucks Foundation, and the PwC Charitable Foundation. So this is for all of you 15 people who are in the audience, that we're thinking about how to do more and not to lay back and to worry just about today's problems. So I woke up and I started to think about, are we more concerned about what's happening today than what's happening in the future? So are we worried about how do we fix the problems that are going on, or are we trying to solve for the social and environmental crises that we know of today? Or are we actually looking at what would it look like to prevent them from happening, and what would it look like to actually outlast the problems of the future? So we have started to look at this whole notion around megatrends, which of course are not new. We all know about megatrends, but are you actually looking at megatrends and making sure that you're investing in what they mean so that you're not solving for today's problems, that maybe you even wait to solve today's problems when years have passed and the problems are bigger and there's other ways to look at them. So when you think of things like the megatrends and the movements that are happening, these global massive shifts, you look at demographic changes. You know, one of the things that we've talked about is the different cultural demographic changes, but what about the fact that by 2050, 60% of the world's population, or actually 20% of the world's population, will be over 60? What does that mean? When we think about what healthcare is, are we thinking about that number, or are we thinking about where we are today? When you think about that, are we realizing that the innovators today that come from what we now call the developed nations, the innovators will be coming from those younger nations that are soon to be developed. So what are you doing now as innovators to grow those entrepreneurs in other countries who by 2050 are going to be in the position, because of their ages and because the GDP will swing in their direction, they're going to be the ones who are true innovators. Also, what are we doing when we look about how to actually take advantage of different issues that are happening out there from a geographical perspective? You know, we know by 2050, 72% increase in people living in cities. Suddenly we're going to have megacities, right? Estimated 22 megacities by the UN. What does that mean for us? We spend a lot of time talking about what we're going to do with governments, what we're going to do with individual countries. Now what we're going to focus on is what to do with cities. And are we planning for that now? Or is that just something that we know or think will happen in the future and we're not giving it any kind of consideration? When we think about what's happening with climate change and with scarcity of resources, we tend to think of those things in individual buckets. At PwC, we focus a lot on energy because it's the biggest thing that we have. But the nexus now will be between energy and water and food, and what are we doing in that space? Have we looked at how we actually need to change our processes to adapt to what it's going to look like in 2050? Or are we still trying to solve for today, or to solve for what 10 years from today looks like? We need to challenge ourselves and say, incremental thinking for today and from 10 years and for 20 years isn't going to be enough. And what does that look like? One of the things that PwC put out recently was a PwC Breakthrough Innovation and Growth Study. And in this study, it said that businesses do innovate, but they innovate and they want to be safe. So it's safe innovation. Okay, not really sure if safe innovation is incremental change or big change, but it sounds to me like it's pretty small change. They also want to make sure that it's attached to profit and attached to growth. If that's the only reason why big companies want to innovate, we have a big problem. Because the other thing that we know is that those companies who truly want to make radical innovations have 60% greater chance of being profitable. So why don't we do this? Those of us who sit here and are from companies and even from nonprofits who are looking at making innovative solutions, are they radical? Are they incremental? How do we make sure that we're reflecting back and really challenging ourselves? One of the things that Kathy talked about was the real importance of collaboration. And I think we dramatically underestimate that. And every time I come here, and I've had the incredible opportunity to come to about 6 of these, is that we walk away and we don't necessarily follow up with all those people that we've met. And collaborations have to be generative. They have to be mutual. They have to be sustainable. And you know what? They're not driven on money. And a lot of the things that we do when we walk out of here, we approach one another, or we're very eager to see somebody has an idea that we believe in, and we want to say, how much can you invest? Well, if you take a look around this room, and the ideas and the passion and the knowledge that we can pull together, trust me, is bigger than any check collectively that we can write. So how can we harness the power in this room and figure out how to address some of those large mega trends that are going on in not a way that's incremental to really make a difference? It's also about ensuring that we're not fearful of what will happen. One of the things I know that nonprofits do and corporations most certainly do is we're afraid that we won't have the competitive advantage if we share what we know. We're afraid that if we share, suddenly we won't be distinctive anymore. Or our egos get in the way, that we want to have the limelight. And again, we need to look around and ensure that the population that we're going to help doesn't care about our egos. And they don't care who's more distinctive than somebody else. They're trying to solve the biggest environmental and social and frankly governance issues that have ever faced the world that we're in. And so my challenge to you all is to really focus on what we can do. Focus on what collaborations can actually come out of looking to one another. One of the things that I was amazed at last night, we had a wonderful dinner, was actually talking about what are the things that we all do. And I sat around the table and there were so many people who focused specifically on education. Education is one of the things that PwC is very committed to, and we have a large commitment around that. And yet, we don't tap into all of those different organizations to figure out how to leverage the resources and to leverage the scope and the reach that they have. So I want people who are determined to figure out how do we solve for education, not today and not in the next 10 years, but who are really willing to put education on its head and think about it in a much bigger, broader, global perspective. Because that's the type of thinking that we need on every single one of these issues to really move the mark. So challenge yourselves, challenge your missions, challenge what you've decided your vision is, and I would argue to put another 10, 20, 30 years on that. Because if you're just thinking down the road, you're going to be able to get there, but frankly, you're not going to make the change that's really going to be compelling. It's going to be change that we don't need to just turn around and look at how to do it differently in that next 10 or 20 years. So you have an absolutely amazing opportunity over the next rest of today and tomorrow to, when you hear people talk and when you listen to what you think you can do, to take a step back and to decide you're going to do something more, and you're going to conquer your fears, and you're going to go up to your competitor, and you're going to go up to the person who was sitting aside and you thought was doing the same thing and you didn't want to collaborate. You're going to go and talk to them, and you're going to figure out how you're going to collaborate with at least one of those people over the next day and a half. Don't be afraid, because your fear is what is going to stop us from being able to get to that next place. And so I'm all for being disruptive, and I think one of the things that Zeev has empowered us to do over the years is be disruptive in this group and have disruptive thoughts. But let's be disruptive in a smart way, and also let's make sure that we're being disruptive in a pack. Because when you look around the room, the power here is us together, and we don't want to lose that power when we walk out of here as individuals. So I challenge you to find other people to be a part of your pack, and then let us know what that was like. And I hope that those emerging innovators in the room today can take us to the next level and challenge what you're working on right now to even go further. So thank you very much, and really take advantage of all we have here.